Hello, I'm Mark Thompson. I'm Professor of Digital Economy at the University of Exeter Business School here in the UK. I've been writing and thinking about digital government, platforms, cloud, all the kinds of topics we're going to be addressing here for a number of years. I've also built and run three public sector specialist and focused organisations specialising in digital transformation for some time. I've been a critic, constructive critic and blogger on social media about government technical and technological initiatives for some time, and was a co-author of a book called Digitising Government a few years ago, whose principles still apply here in what I'm going to be talking about today. So today we're going to be talking about local government, local services, and understanding their relevance to cloud and emerging technology and platforms. And the way into this is essentially to understand the challenge and opportunities that cloud-based technologies and services in the digital era offer to government politicians, senior administrators, policymakers, and people on the front line. I'm going to start by understanding why government is such a legacy organisation, because that really is key to understanding the business opportunities available to people in government from adopting modern technology. So one good way into that is a recommendation I've got. There's a chap called Max Tegmark. He's a physicist and also found time to write a market-leading book on artificial intelligence called Life 3.0, where he examines some of the implications for existing policymakers of what is coming down the tracks for us. And here is a still from my own personal book copy. Here you can see a map. It's a topography, if you like, that shows how what he terms the oceans are rising in time as artificial intelligence evolves and becomes more mature. And you can see along here anything that you can attach an algorithm to, anything you can automate using technology, is increasingly becoming redundant. Examples such as arithmetic and chess, and the game Jeopardy, for example. And those activities at the top, science and AI design, and maybe being a comedian and some of the cultural activities, are for the time being a little bit more shielded from what is coming down at all of us. So turning to that and what it means for government, well, it seems to me that legacy organisations grew all of their people, their processes and their technologies, in other words, their very DNA, before the rise of the modern internet, and particularly before the appearance of modern digital services such as artificial intelligence that are increasingly challenging many of those traditional ways of doing things. And this means particularly for government, which of course is very process-centric. A large percentage of the people, processes and technology are really doing not very much of public value anymore. It's a difficult message to get across, but it's true. They are moving underwater, in Tegmark's terms, in the digital era. And that presents an enormous challenge as well as an opportunity for those of us that work in local services. And so my challenge to you as policymakers and leaders in local services is, do we think that local government organisations will look and do the same things in decades' time? 1 decade, 2 decades of time? And if not, what are we doing about it? What digital public service infrastructure are we building for future generations, or are we really just kicking the can down the road? So this problem is very, very pressing. I'm going to use examples from the United Kingdom because that's where I've gained my experience, and I wouldn't presume to lecture any of you from the outside the UK on your own local environments. However, of course, the important point is all public services have a very, very similar model regardless of the local variation. So everything I'm saying about the UK applies to a greater or lesser extent to you as well. So in the UK, for example, our services are strikingly dysfunctional. If you were an alien and you landed and looked at the way in which we organise ourselves, we are cutting all of our frontline services. Less doctors, teachers, nurses, social care, daycare centres, parks, libraries. Cut, cut, cut for citizens. And yet we are still maintaining this ludicrous legacy structure of our organisations. We have 430 local authorities, 168,000 charities, 650 health trusts, 1,500 social housing providers, all of whom do very much the same thing at the back end, at the administrative part of their business model, and all of whom are cutting the things that citizens actually want. So huge back office costs, inability to share and cooperate, and meanwhile, lots of cuts for everybody. My message to you is that digital technologies mean there is an alternative to this crazy way of doing things. So we have to find an alternative. We absolutely need to. This is a still from a few years ago showing the chief exec of our own National Health Service saying about 15% of our health budget was spent on back office administration. Now, I don't believe that, I'm afraid, and I'm on record of saying that, partly because it's a government figure and there is a desire maybe to minimise the impact of that knowledge. I think it's probably closer to 30% of our total healthcare budget in this country going on things that don't touch doctors or nurses, non-clinical activity, that we could very much start to consolidate, commoditise and share at the back end by using cloud-based technologies and services. So the opportunity here is huge, and therefore the question for all of you is, if this was a map of your own public services, where are the flooded bits? Where are the lowlands? Where are the areas for which there is progressively less and less excuse to reinvent the wheel and to do again and again and again activities which have little or no value to your local citizens? Where are we really just playing Jeopardy? So, as a way into this thinking, and thanks here to Mark Foden, who did a brilliant video called The Gubbins of Government that I will be referring to in some of these segments, we can see here the way in which we are organised, both collectively across the sector, as well as internally within our own organisations. And these are silos that we're going to hear a lot about in these segments, where, as you can see, they don't talk to each other, we can't share data, and we have to rebuild everything from the ground up every single time. This is not a way that is sustainable for us to run any organisations globally in the digital era, and especially not a way in which we can run governments in the future. So we have to do something about it. In an era of rising economic inequality, of global uncertainty and difficult environments for many of us coming up over the next few years, we simply cannot afford for our local public services to feel like a blockbuster delivery model, a blockbuster government, if you like, in an era of Netflix where the rules have absolutely changed, because the cracks have appeared in the ice and they're only going to get worse.